Hi, my name is Bethany, and today I want to talk to you about same food or food selectivity in autism. The official term for this appears to be food selectivity, but a lot of autistic adults online might make references to something they call same foods or even safe foods. I believe this is actually a part of the phenomenon called food selectivity, but kind of like a subset or subgroup. So to begin all of this, let's first talk about food selectivity. Someone who has issues with food selectivity is going to be more than your average picky eater. This could be a lot more restricted, just kind of like how it is for a lot of autistic people, how we have restricted patterns and ways of doing things. This also falls under that. So it's not just like, oh, my child is picky and doesn't like things sometimes. This is a bit further than that. An article written in association with the Davidson Institute for Talent Development says the following. While picky eaters eat a limited number of foods from each food group, selective eaters have aversions to many more foods or have unusual aversions, such as avoiding all cereals, all meats, all cold foods, all foods with a certain color, etc. According to research done by Susan Mays, a professor of psychiatry, atypical eating patterns were present in 70% of autistic children, which is 15 times more common than in neurotypical children. Using a parent interview to study the prevalence of atypical behavior in children with ASD and children with a history of language disorders, Dominic et al. Found that more than 75% of autistic children showed atypical eating behavior compared to only 17% in the group of children with a history of language disorders. And while neurotypical children have a prevalence of selective eating ranging from 10% to 30%, this rate range goes up to 46% to 89% in autistic children. From this information, it is quite clear that food selectivity is very prominent in those who have autism or autistic individuals. In fact, this is increasingly being considered as a signal or a sign that a medical professional should refer a child to see if they have autism because of how prevalent it is in autistic people. Now, this food selectivity thing can actually make a lot of sense if you really think of it in the scope of the autistic experience. Autistic people tend to have a very different sensory experience than the average person. These very unique sensory profiles can make someone oversensitive or undersensitive to any kind of sense. So that could be textures and smells and sounds and stuff like that. And of course, that same sensitivity, hypersensitivity, or hyposensitivity can apply to food. Even the feeling of full or hunger can be affected in autistic people. Those who have what some people call oral fixations, or basically tend to mouth things or like to chew things or stuff like that, might be more likely to have these kinds of food preferences if they're seeking or wanting to avoid certain sensations in their mouth specifically. Additionally, the same things that we can be very particular about in general, such as finding certain textures or colors or whatever to be soothing or off-putting, can again also apply to food. Now, because autism tends to be comorbid and can be comorbid with a laundry list of other conditions, it is very important to find out if something else is going on before you kind of chalk it up to just a sensory aversion or not liking something for sensory reasons. So there could be something going on with their teeth, their gums, or really any other part of the digestive system that would cause them to avoid certain foods or just food in general. This is especially important to look into because a lot of autistic people specifically have GI or gastrointestinal issues. Some research suggests that at least half of all autistic children have significant gastrointestinal symptoms, and researchers have many times found unique forms of inflammatory bowel disease in these children. So if the issue doesn't actually stem from something medical, then it is quite likely that sensory has a play in what is happening with food selectivity. Many parents report their autistic children as only eating foods that are room temperature, crunchy, or even certain foods from certain restaurants. Environment can actually also play a role in this, so being around unfamiliar people or in an unfamiliar setting, or even having like the wrong color or the wrong kind of plate or utensil. These sorts of things can be even anxiety inducing or off-putting to autistic people, and that might affect part of why they might be food selective. And obviously in situations where they might be stressed out, just refuse food altogether. So now that we've talked about what food selectivity actually technically is, I would like to address the concept of same food. Sometimes people call them safe foods. I really feel like this is almost a way of stimming, and not necessarily an actual stim, because stims require repetitive behavior basically, but in a sense that same kind of structure and repeating to bring comfort. So it's not necessarily, I don't think you can really count that as a stim because it's not like happening over and over within a short amount of time. However, I believe the function can often be similar. That also means that some autistic people might stim to soothe themselves or regulate. They might find certain foods to be soothing, and going to those same foods can cause a less stressful experience overall. It's something you know how it's going to taste, you might know how to prepare it, maybe you know how to order it the easiest. You have like a script for how you order it or how you buy it or whatever. It is something that is familiar and constant and consistent. And as autistic people, we tend to like those kind of things. Much of the time, I've noticed that same foods tend to be things that are easy to prepare or easy to otherwise access. I believe that food choices, much like a lot of other life choices that autistic people make, can be really influenced by, well, the autistic experience and trouble with executive functioning. So if there are multiple steps to something, those types of things kind of pile on, right? So if I choose like the easiest route for me, the one that is most familiar, the one that I know how to handle, the one that doesn't take a whole lot of complicated things to get to, wouldn't I kind of do the same thing for food? So it's much easier when you're not feeling it and you realize, hey, maybe I'm hungry. At that point, a lot of times, if you've reached the point you've realized, I'm really hungry, a lot of autistic people do not have the energy to expend on making themselves a really fancy meal or figuring out how to go about all that. Just like ramen or like SpaghettiOs or Hot Pockets, that's one of mine. Just something that is simple and easy, or hop in the car and go get your favorite meal at your favorite fast food restaurant or something like that. Or pop in the chicken nuggets or something. Something that's very simple, because a lot of times, again, when you're out of energy and out of the ability to like put all those things in, especially because you're hungry, it's gonna influence what kind of food you want to eat or that you will prepare for yourself. Some people are more strict on same foods than others. Some might just kind of get on a kick, and for like a month they might have the same thing almost every lunchtime or something because it's predictable. They have discovered that the sensory experience was fine or delightful. It may have gone down well and not caused GI issues. There are many reasons why someone might choose their same food, or whatever reason, they just really like it, and that's that. Some people will only eat certain foods for years on end, and they'll just go stock up on like bulk amounts of this food because that is what they find comforting and predictable, and it's what they know they'll eat. And so this kind of same food situation where someone might eat the same exact thing for lunch and dinner and breakfast, like there's their breakfast food the entire month, that's all they'll have for breakfast and all they'll have for certain things. So it's different for different people. I think it's kind of funny because I mentioned the concept of food selectivity and same food to my husband, and he said, "You don't eat the same thing every day." And then he goes, "Well, because I don't let you." Because we tend to eat together, I might want the same thing over and over, but he's not interested in that, or he'll be like, oh, again? And kind of push me towards not eating the exact same thing every day. But a lot of times if he's not around, I'm probably gonna have a Hot Pocket for lunch every day, and that's just gonna be how it is. And unfortunately, I have ruined some foods for myself that I have gone all same food on for a while, and then all of a sudden one day it was just like, I don't like this. And it's very problematic when you've gotten a lot of this food, because you realize I really do like this and I'll eat this every day, and then a month later you're like, I don't want it anymore. So the problem with food selectivity is that it can cause nutritional problems. One study found that 53% of autistic children had intakes that were below the recommended nutrient intake for one or more nutrients, including iron, vitamin D, vitamin C, niacin, riboflavin, and zinc. While the majority of these children didn't consume adequate amounts of fruits and vegetables, 94% ate foods on a daily basis that were considered to be in the fatty and sugary groups. Having nutritional habits like these and deficits in the actual nutrition can obviously cause problems, maybe even turn into major medical problems. So how do we address food selectivity? The first thing I'd like to say is that if it is not actually significantly negatively impacting someone's health, I don't know how much it's worth going after, because if it's not a major ordeal, maybe some of their same foods or their food selectivity, they're capable of getting most of their nutrients, it's not causing them any medical problems or health issues, then really, other than it being annoying to some people, I don't really think that it's necessary to change. However, obviously there are situations where it's going to be like, if you can't just eat chicken nuggets for the rest of your life, that's not going to give you the nutrients you need, and that's going to significantly impact you for, you know, however long you're in your body, because you're eating chicken nuggets all the time, and that's it. Now, another thing I want to also say up front here is that a lot of times when we start talking about helping to expand palates or helping with feeding and stuff like that, a lot of people turn to ABA or ABA-like programs for feeding, and I would highly, highly recommend against doing that. A lot of times ABA feeding programs can either just not help, but a lot of times it's at danger of making things worse. And food is one of those things that it's very easy to develop a disorder around, and I would just be very, very, very careful about how we treat food with people who can develop rituals around things very easily. So ABA is just one of those things I don't believe is a good idea for addressing food selectivity that is causing harm. Now, there are approaches that are much more appropriate in addressing food selectivity issues in autistic people. Working with a team of dietitians, occupational therapists, and psychologists can increase effectiveness. Things such as food records or 24-hour diet recalls can help a dietitian determine what nutrients may be at risk to be able to possibly supplement in other forms. Occupational therapists can use a sensory integration approach, including deep touch pressure and proprioception, to decrease sensory defensiveness, which may play a significant role in why autistic people are selective eaters. They can also modify the environment to reduce stimuli to help the autistic person tolerate the sensory issues surrounding eating. Social stories, sensory stories, mealtime stories, or written charts may help to prepare the autistic person for different foods. I hope this video helped you to understand what food selectivity is, the concept of same or safe foods, and their ties to autism, and ways to help when food selectivity is becoming a nutritional or health issue. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, go ahead and hit the like button. If you're interested in hearing more autism related things from me, you can go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I upload to this channel every Thursday at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time.
Thank you to everyone who supports me through YouTube as channel members and my patrons through Patreon. And a special thank you to my Spaz tier patron, Jesse Graves.
Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!